The woman scrubbed blood from her torn sleeve like her life depended on it because it did. Her hands were shaking. Her breath came out ragged. She did not hear the cowboy behind her until the hammer of his revolver clicked back through the cottonwoods. She froze. Then, without turning, without breathing, she spoke the words she had rehearsed for 3 nights straight. "If you're one of Silas Crow's men, then shoot me now. I'm asking you. I ain't going back. Not alive. Before we ride any further down this road, if you believe in your bones that no woman should ever be bought, sold, or silenced by any man alive, take a second right now and subscribe to the channel. Stay with me all the way to the end of this story. I promise you, it's worth it. And drop a comment below telling me what city you are watching from tonight. I want to see just how far this story travels." Caleb Whitaker reined his sorrel to a hard stop and slid down out of the saddle before the horse had finished breathing out. He had ridden home early for one reason and one reason only. The hoofprints along his northern fence line were wrong. 3 riders, heavy horses, shod east, not west, not his. He pulled the Colt from the holster and walked the last 30 yards on foot, boots quiet on pine needles that had baked all morning in the summer heat. Then he heard it, splashing, too soft for a steer, too rough for a deer, too careful for anything that belonged on his land. He stepped through the last line of cottonwoods with the gun up. "Hands where I can see them, right now." The woman in the creek did not scream. She did not run. She did not even drop what she was holding. She simply froze in place with one arm buried up to the elbow in the cold water, and the other clutching a torn sleeve gone dark and sticky with blood. "Turn around," Caleb said. Slow. She turned. Her hair was the color of rust in late October. Her face was sunburned clear down to the bone. Her eyes were not the eyes of somebody stealing from his land. They were the eyes of something that had been run and run hard for a long, long time. "I said hands, ma'am." She raised them. The creek water dripped off her fingers in slow, fat drops. "Name," Caleb said. She did not give it. "Name, ma'am. I won't ask you a 3rd time." "If you're one of Silas Crow's men," she said, and her voice did not shake, which surprised him more than anything else so far, "then shoot me now. I'm asking you straight. I ain't going back. Not alive." Caleb did not lower the gun. "I don't know any Silas Crow." "You're lying." "No, ma'am. I reckon I'm not. Every man from Durango to Pagosa Springs knows his name. I don't ride to Durango. I don't ride to Pagosa. I ride my own line, and right now my line's got you standing in the middle of it. So I'll ask you one more time nice and plain. Who are you?" She looked at the gun. She looked at the creek behind her. She looked at the cottonwoods like she was measuring how fast she could run and how soon he would drop her. "Eleanor," she said finally. "Hartwell. Folks used to call me Nell." "Eleanor Hartwell, you are bleeding on my land. Then I'll be on my way. You'll drop before the next ridge." "That's my concern, cowboy." "It's on my land," Caleb said. "That makes it my concern till you're off it." Something in her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. More like the ghost of one. The kind of smile a person wears when they have forgotten how to do it, but the muscles remember anyway. "Then shoot me and be done with it. I ain't worth the trouble." Caleb lowered the hammer of the Colt. He did not holster it, but he lowered the hammer. "I don't shoot women in creeks, ma'am. I don't shoot women anywhere, and I sure as hell don't turn them back over to whoever put that cut in their arm." "Nobody cut it. I cut it on barbed wire." "Barbed wire don't make that kind of tear, Miss Hartwell." "It does when you're running hard enough." He watched her for a long moment. The Colt was down at his side now, but he still had it. "How long you been running?" 4 nights. "Food?" "Creek water." "Horse?" "Died yesterday." "Weapon?" She did not answer, but her left hand drifted half an inch toward her skirt where the fabric pulled tight against something small and hard and sharp. "Keep the knife," Caleb said. "Ain't my business." Her eyes narrowed to slits. "Why?" "Because if you stab me, ma'am, I reckon you'd have earned the right." She swayed then. Not a faint, not a collapse, just a small sway the way a tree sways when the root is finally cut and the top has not yet figured it out. Caleb moved. "Easy now. Easy. Don't you touch me." "I am not touching you. I am kneeling. You see, both hands where you can watch them." He went down on one knee, the Colt resting loose and empty of threat against his thigh. "Miss Hartwell, when did you last eat anything?" "Thursday." "It is Monday, ma'am." She closed her eyes. "Is it? You sit in that creek one more hour. You are not going to be running from anybody. You are going to be buried up under my cottonwoods, and I do not keep a preacher out this far to say nice things over your grave. So you have got yourself a choice here. You can keep cutting at a sleeve that is already ruined. Or you can come back with me to the house and eat something hot." "I don't know you." "No, ma'am, you don't." "I don't know if you're lying." "No, ma'am, you don't." "Then why should I come?" Caleb thought about that one. He was not a man who talked more than he had to, and already he had talked more in 10 minutes down by this creek than he usually talked in a full day. "Because," he said at last, "I do not buy women, I do not return them, and I do not leave them to die in my creek. That is all I have got to offer, Miss Hartwell. You want it, you got it. You don't, I will fill your canteen and point you down toward water." She stared at him. "Say that again." "I do not buy women, I do not return them, I do not leave them to die." Her jaw trembled, just the once. Then she locked it down so hard he heard her teeth click. "All right, cowboy." "Whitaker." "All right, Whitaker." "Caleb, if it suits you." "Caleb, then." He stood up slow. He held out a hand. She did not take it. She pushed herself up out of the creek on her own knees, shaking so bad the water splashed around her ankles. "That your horse?" she asked, nodding at the sorrel standing steady at the edge of the cottonwoods. "That's Duke. He bite only the men that try to steal him." "Good," she said. "Then him and me will get along fine." Dow. They rode double. Caleb kept her in front of him, one arm loose around her waist, the way a brother might hold a sister, not the way a man might hold a woman. She sat up stiff as a fence post for the first half-mile. "You can lean back, Miss Hartwell." "I'm fine." "You are about to fall off this saddle." "I'm fine." 2 minutes later she leaned back. He could feel her shaking against his chest. It was 90 degrees in the shade, and she was shaking like it was the dead middle of January. "Tell me about Crow," he said. "Not soft, not hard, just level." "No." "Ma'am, I just put a runaway bleeding woman up on my horse. I reckon I have earned the name of the man that's coming for her." "You ain't earned a thing, cowboy. You just haven't shot me yet." "Fair enough." They rode another quarter-mile in silence. The sorrel picked his own way up through the pines. "He owns a saloon," she said at last, and her voice was so flat and so empty it sounded like somebody else was talking through her mouth. "In Durango. Owns 2. Owns men in the sheriff's office. Owns the circuit judge on market days. Owns half the cattle buyers on the East Road. And he figures he owns you. My guardian sold me to him." Caleb did not answer right off. His arm tightened maybe half an inch around her waist before he caught himself and let it loose again. "Guardian. Martin Pike, my father's cousin. When my folks died of the fever back in '74, the estate went to him to manage. Then the estate ran out, so he found something else to sell." "How old are you, Miss Hartwell?" 23. "And Crow?" 59. The sorrel walked on. The sound of his hooves seemed very loud in the space Caleb was not filling up with words. "I was to be married on Thursday," she said, almost like she was talking to herself now, and he just happened to be there. "In the yard behind the saloon. Pike was to stand in for my father. Crow had a dress laid out. Yellow. I hate yellow." "Miss Hartwell. He came to the room the night before. He said there was no sense waiting on papers. He said I was already his." Caleb closed his eyes for one long second. He did not stop the horse. "Did he?" No, I had a lamp. I swung it. The curtains caught. I went out through the window. Good. Good. Good that the lamp caught. Good that you swung. Good that you ran. Good you hear me, Miss Hartwell. Good. She did not answer. But he felt her shoulders drop, not in surrender. In something else. In the first inch of a very long road back home to herself. Nobody has ever said good to me about that cowboy. Then nobody has told you the truth yet. She was quiet a long time after that. What about you? She said finally. You got a wife waiting up there at that house of yours? No, ma'am. Sweetheart? No, ma'am. Why not? Never met a woman I could stand beside without trying to tell her what to do. And what changed? Maybe nothing, Miss Hartwell. Maybe today. I reckon we'll find out. The ranch house came into sight through the last break of pines. A log main with a good stone chimney. A barn leaning only a little to the south. A corral. 2 horses in it and a yellow dog asleep under the porch. That's home, Caleb said. Anyone else? 2 hands, Jonah and Eli. They will be out on the south pasture till sundown. They will ask questions. They will ask one. I will answer it. That will be the end of the matter. What answer? He thought. You are my cousin. Come up from Missouri to help out through the summer cattle season. I have no kin in Missouri. Neither do I, ma'am. That is the beauty of it. Something almost like a laugh came out of her. It sounded rusty. It sounded like it had not been used in a long time and did not quite know its way out of her throat anymore. Caleb Whitaker, you are fixing to lie to your own men for me. Ma'am, I already lied to God and country for you back at that creek when I did not shoot the trespasser on my land. One more lie ain't going to bother me none. He helped her down. She put her weight on his shoulder for exactly 1 second before she stepped clean away from him. Food is inside, he said. There is a room at the back. Door locks from the inside. From the inside. Yes, ma'am. You're sure? Built it with my own hands. Locks from the inside. Nothing locks from out here. She walked past him and stopped at the step up to the porch. Her hand went to the rail. She did not take the step. Miss Hartwell? Caleb. Ma'am? If I go into that house, I am trusting you more than I have trusted any living soul in 7 years. Yes, ma'am. If you break that trust, I will kill you in your sleep. Yes, ma'am. I am not joking, cowboy. No, ma'am. I reckon you ain't. She took the step. He fed her thick bean stew and cornbread still warm from the morning's bake. She ate like somebody that had forgot the trick of it. Slow, then fast, then slow again, like her stomach kept overruling her manners, and her manners kept overruling her stomach. She drank 3 full cups of water. She did not drink the coffee. Coffee remind you of him? Caleb asked. She looked up sharp. How did you know that? He owns saloons. Saloons smell of coffee and whiskey. You flinched at the cup. You pay attention, cowboy. It's what keeps the cattle alive, Miss Hartwell. She almost smiled. Almost. I am not cattle, Caleb Whitaker. No, ma'am. You are a guest. Guests drink what they want to drink. There is cold buttermilk in the pantry if you'd prefer. She stared at him for a long beat. Buttermilk. Please. He got up and fetched it. When he came back, her head was already down on her arms at the table. She was asleep, sitting up with a half-eaten piece of cornbread still held loose in her hand. He set the cup down gently on the wood beside her. Miss Hartwell. She did not move. Nell. Her head came up slow. Bed is through there. Door locks from the inside. I will be on the porch. The porch? Yes, ma'am. All night. Yes, ma'am. Why? Because if Crow's riders come up my road tonight, I want to be the first thing they see. She stood. She walked to the door of the back room. She stopped there with her hand on the frame and did not go in. Caleb. Ma'am? Why are you really doing this? He set the buttermilk cup down on a side table beside a chair he had no intention of ever sitting down in. My mother was married off at 16 to a man that owned her the way a hammer owns a nail. She died at 29. The last thing she said to me on this earth was, "Boy, don't you ever look at a woman like she's something that belongs to you. You look at her like she's weather. You can't keep it. You can't hold it. You can only stand beside it and let it do what it's going to do." He looked at her. "I've been standing beside the weather ever since Miss Hartwell. Tonight it blew a woman into my creek. I ain't about to be the roof that caves in on her." Nell Hartwell did not answer. She stepped into the back room. The door closed. He heard the lock slide. Then a moment later he heard the scrape of a chair being dragged across the plank floor and set up tight under the doorknob. He nodded once to no one at all. He walked out onto the porch. He sat down in the old rocker that had been his father's. He laid the Winchester across his knees. He looked down the long, empty ribbon of road that ran back toward town, and Caleb Whitaker began to watch. The sun was still high. There was half a day of light left. The yellow dog came and set his head against Caleb's boot. Out in the corral, Duke shook his mane and stamped. Caleb spoke once quiet, not to the dog, and not to the horse, and not to the woman sleeping behind 3 inches of pine door and an old kitchen chair. "She ain't going back, not while I draw breath on this porch." He thumbed a shell into the Winchester. And far off, maybe 8 miles east, a thin column of trail dust rose up over the ridge road and began very slowly to move his way. The dust column was still 2 miles out when the yellow dog lifted his head off Caleb's boot and growled low in his throat. Caleb did not move. He did not raise the Winchester. He simply thumbed back the hammer with one slow click and waited. Then at 1.5 miles, the column broke apart into 3 separate plumes. Then 4. Then 5. A remuda. Not riders. Cattle drifters coming up the east road to the Jenkins spread the way they had every summer since Caleb first put stakes in this ground. He let the hammer down. "False alarm, boy," he said to the dog. The dog laid his head back down. Caleb sat on that porch through the whole of the night. He did not sleep. He watched the stars wheel over the San Juan peaks, and he watched the road, and he listened to the sound of nothing at all coming out of the back room, where a woman was locked behind a chair that would not have stopped a determined cat, let alone a man with a pistol. By sunup, she had not come out. By 8 in the morning, she had not come out. By 9, Jonah Briggs came walking up from the bunkhouse with his hat in one hand and a tin mug in the other, and he stopped on the lowest step of the porch and looked at his boss, and he said nothing at all. "Morning, Jonah." "Boss." "Say it." "Ain't said nothing yet." "You are fixing to. Go on and get it over with." Jonah sipped his coffee. He was 46 years old and had not been surprised by anything in 16 years. "There is a woman's shawl hanging off the back of the kitchen chair through that window." "Yes." "And there is blood on the creek stones down at the north draw. I walked it at dawn." "Yes." "You shoot her, boss." "No, Jonah, I did not shoot her." "All right." "That is it. All right." "Boss, I've been writing for you 6 years. You want to tell me, you will tell me. You don't want to tell me, I will saddle up and ride the south fence and come back at dusk with one less question in my head." Caleb almost smiled. "Her name is Eleanor Hartwell. She is my cousin. Come up from Missouri to help through the summer cattle season." Jonah Briggs sipped his coffee again. "Missouri," he said. "Missouri. Cousin. Cousin. You ain't got any kin in Missouri, boss." "I do now." Jonah nodded slow. He looked out toward the road where the dust from the Jenkins remuda had long since settled. "She got a man coming for her." "Yes." "One man or a company? Company. How big a company?" "Big enough that he figures the law will ride in with him." Jonah was quiet. "Cousin Eleanor," he said. "Cousin Nell when it suits her." "Cousin Nell." Jonah took a long pull of his coffee. "I will tell Eli. He will ask one question, and then he will not ask again. That boy was raised by a grandmother that cut a cane across his knuckles for prying. He pries real careful now." "Thank you, Jonah." "Ain't thanked me yet, boss." "I am thanking you now." "Then you are thanking me too early. I have not done the thing." Jonah tipped his hat and walked on past the house toward the corral. Behind Caleb, the door of the back room opened. He did not turn. "How much of that did you hear, Miss Hartwell?" "All of it." "Good. Your man knows I am not your cousin." "My man knows what he needs to know, which is that he is not to ask." She stepped out onto the porch. She had washed. The tear in the sleeve had been stitched with something borrowed from the sewing kit he kept by the kitchen stove. Her hair was braided back flat. She looked like a woman who had decided some time between midnight and sunrise that she was not going to die today after all, and was mildly annoyed about having made such a large decision all by herself. "You sat out here all night?" "Yes, ma'am." "The whole night?" "Yes, ma'am." Caleb Whitaker. "Ma'am?" "A man that does not sleep is a man that makes mistakes in the daytime." "I slept plenty in my 20s, Miss Hartwell. I am working through the debt now." That got half a smile out of her. Only half. But it was more than yesterday. "What would you have me do today?" she said. "Eat first. After that?" "Anything you are willing to do. Nothing you are not." "That is not an answer, cowboy." "It is the only answer I have got, ma'am." She crossed her arms. "I am not sitting in a back room for 3 days jumping at the sound of my own heartbeat." "No, ma'am, I would not ask you to." "Then give me work." "Miss Hartwell." "Work, Caleb. Real work. The kind that puts calluses on hands and stops a mind from circling the same 6 memories." He studied her for a long moment. "The chickens need feeding. The stove wants more wood. There is a wash basin of shirts that has waited on a woman's patience since March. And the calf in the second stall has a cut on his fetlock that I cannot seem to keep clean because every time I lift his leg he kicks me in the chest." "Start me with the calf." "The calf will kick you too." "Then I will kick him back." Caleb stood up slow and stretched the long night out of his spine. "Miss Hartwell, you are going to do just fine here." She did not answer, but something in the set of her jaw came down half an inch, and he counted that as a victory and did not say so. By noon she had fed the chickens. By 1 she had cleaned the calf's fetlock without being kicked, because she had sat beside him for 10 whole minutes first and hummed a tune low in her throat until the animal stopped trembling. By 2 she had the shirts boiling in the big iron pot out back. By 3 she had a blister the size of a nickel on her palm, and she had not once asked for help. At 4 she came into the kitchen and found Caleb laying a handful of silver dollars out on the table in neat stacks. She stopped in the doorway. "What is that?" "Wages." "I have been here one day, Caleb." "These are last week's wages, and next week's, paid in advance." "I have not worked last week." "No, ma'am. But if I pay you only for the work you have done, then you are tied to this house until the next payday. I do not care to tie you to anything. So these are yours now. You can take them and walk out that door this minute if you want to, and I will not stop you, and I will not follow you, and I will not ask for them back." She stared at the silver. "That is $12, cowboy." "Yes, ma'am. That is more than a month's wages for a ranch girl." "Not on my ranch. You do not pay Jonah that much. Jonah does not need it the way you need it." She did not move for a long time. Then, very slowly, she sat down at the table across from him, and she put her hand flat over the silver stacks, and she pushed them back to him across the wood. "No. Miss Hartwell. No, Caleb. You do not understand. I have had things given to me before. Dresses, rooms, jewelry, a horse once. Every one of those things had a rope on the other end of it. By the time I figured out where the rope went, I was already broke to saddle. There is no rope on this. A woman learns to stop believing that. Then test it. Take the money. Walk to town. Buy a ticket on the stage out of Silverton. I will saddle the horse myself and ride you to the stage station and wave goodbye from the dust. And if I stay, then you stay on your own feet with your own coin in your own pocket. Not on my charity, not on my mercy, and not on my want of you either, Miss Hartwell, because I have not got any want of you that you need to answer for." Her eyes came up sharp at that. "You do not want me. I did not say that." "Then what are you saying, cowboy?" I am saying that what I want is my own to carry. It is not a debt you owe me. You eat my stew because you are hungry. You sleep in that back room because you are tired. You take these wages because you earned them, whether I decide to pay you for 1 day or 1 year. None of it costs you one single thing. Do you hear me, Nell? She did not answer at first. She was looking down at the silver. Say it again. None of it cost you one single thing. The part before. Nell. Yes, she said. That. Nell. My father used to call me Nell. Then that is what you are called if it suits you. It suits me. She took 3 of the silver dollars off the top of the stack. Only 3. She left the rest. She put the 3 in her apron pocket. 3 is what I earned today, she said. Nell, 3, Caleb. The rest waits for the work. I will not be owned twice in one summer, not even by kindness. He did not argue. He did not argue because he heard under the words the first real bone of the woman underneath everything that had been done to her. And he knew the same way he knew weather, that to push against that bone right now would break something he was never going to get a second chance at. 3 it is then, Nell Hartwell. She nodded once sharp and went back out to check on the boiling shirts. That night, Eli Turner met her for the first time over supper. He was 22 years old, and he had been raised, as Jonah had said, by a grandmother with a cane. He stood up when Nell came into the room, and he took off his hat, and he said, "Ma'am." And then he did not say another word to her for the rest of the meal. He passed her the bread when she needed it. He passed her the salt before she asked. He did not look at her twice. After supper, he walked out to the barn with Jonah and Caleb, and Jonah said, "Well," and Eli said, "She is kin to somebody, but she ain't kin to him, and whoever she is kin to, they did not treat her right." How did you figure that? The way she held her spoon, Jonah, like somebody was fixing to take it off her. Jonah was quiet a long moment. "You are a good boy, Eli." "I am 22, Jonah." "You are a good boy." Inside the house, Nell was drying dishes. Caleb stood in the doorway with a towel over his shoulder and watched her for 1 full minute before he spoke. "Tomorrow," he said, "I am going to teach you to shoot." The plate in her hand stopped moving. Why? Because a woman who cannot shoot is a woman that waits on men to decide whether she lives. I am through with you waiting on any man for anything. I have never fired a gun in my life. Tomorrow you will have fired 40. Caleb, it is not to make you violent, Nell. It is to make you unafraid. There is a difference, and I will show it to you in the morning. She set the plate down. Her hands were trembling just a little. Not from fear, from something else. From the size of the thing he had just offered her, which was not a gun, but the idea that she had the right to hold one. "All right, cowboy," she said softly. "Tomorrow." The next morning, by the long flat rock behind the barn, Caleb set out a row of 6 tin cans on a fence rail, and he put a Colt in her hand, and he stood behind her and said, "Feet apart, shoulders down, eyes open, both of them. Both. A woman that squints misses. A woman that sees hits. Now breathe." She breathed. "Now squeeze. Do not pull. Do not yank. Squeeze like you are asking the trigger to come back, and it is deciding whether to." She squeezed. The first can did not move. Neither did the second. Neither did the third. On the fourth, the can jumped. She did not squeal. She did not laugh. She simply lowered the Colt and looked at the empty space on the rail where the can had been, and something in her shoulders came down another half-inch, and Caleb, standing a step behind her, closed his eyes for 1 slow second and thanked every quiet thing he had ever believed in. "Again," she said. "Again." He agreed. By sundown she had shot 41 cans. She had hit 23 of them. She walked back to the house with the Colt heavy in her apron pocket, and she did not ask him to take it off her hands. 6 days passed. On the 7th day, Jonah Briggs rode back from town with the mail and a look in his eye that a man like Caleb did not need a second glance to read. "Boss, speak. 2 riders came through Silverton yesterday, asking after a woman." The kitchen went very still. Nell was at the stove. She did not turn around. The spoon in her hand went on stirring the pot round and round, and only the knuckles of the hand gave her away, gone white as old bone against the wood. "Asking what?" Caleb said. "Asking after a woman with auburn hair, height around 5 and 5, age 20 to 25, last seen 4 counties east. There is paper on her." "Paper. Reward. $100 living. $50 if she is brought back otherwise." Nell's spoon stopped. She set it down very carefully on the rim of the pot. She turned around. "How much did you say?" "100, ma'am, if living." 100. She laughed once, short and ugly. "That is what I am worth. $100 to a saloon keeper." "Nell." "No, Caleb, do not Nell me right now." She crossed to the table and put both hands flat on it and leaned down over the wood like her bones had gone heavy. $100, 7 years award of Martin Pike, 4 days a runaway, $100. "Ma'am," Jonah said quiet. "Begging pardon, you are worth considerable more than that to the man paying. He would not ride the paper if you were not." She looked up at him. "How would you know what I am worth to him, Mr. Briggs? Because cheap men, ma'am, do not pay $100 for anything they only wanted a little." She was silent. Caleb stepped around the table. "Nell, I have to go." "No." "I have to, Caleb. They will work east to west. They will hit every ranch and every homestead. In 2 weeks, maybe 3, they will come up this road. I cannot bring that down on you and your men. Nell, listen to me. You listen to me, cowboy." She was not crying. She was past crying. She had the flat, dead voice of a person who had done this math many times and always come out the same side of it. "You have been kind to me. You have fed me and paid me and put a gun in my hand. I will not be the thing that costs you this ranch. You are not going to cost me 1 single head of cattle, Nell Hartwell. You do not know that. I know it." "How?" "Because I have thought about it every hour you have been under this roof, and because the answer I keep coming back to is the same answer. Running kept you alive, Nell. Staying may teach you that you are allowed to live." She stared at him. Jonah Briggs, standing by the door with his hat still in his hand, set the hat on the hook by the jamb and walked out quietly without being asked. "Running kept me alive," she repeated. "Yes." "Staying may teach me that I am allowed to live." "Yes." "Caleb Whitaker, you are a dangerous man." "No, ma'am. I am a tired man. And I have watched you go white 4 times in the last minute, and I would like you to sit down." She did not sit down. "1 month," she said. "Ma'am, I will stay 1 month, not 1 day longer. After that, if those riders have not come, I will take the stage out of Silverton, and I will go east or I will go west, and I will go alone. I will pay you back every silver dollar. I will not look behind me. Do you hear me, cowboy?" "I hear you, Nell." 1 month. 1 month. Do not ask me to change it. I will not. Do not ask me to stay longer. I will not. Do not look at me the way you are looking at me right now. I am not looking at you any kind of way, ma'am. You are Caleb. You are looking at me like I am weather. He did not answer that one. He did not have to. She sat down at the table, finally slow with her hands flat in her lap, and she looked at the wood for a long time. 1 month. She said a third time quieter, like she was speaking to herself now more than to him, and out past the porch, out past the corral, out past the long pine road that ran east toward town, and every trouble a man could want, the summer sun went down behind the San Juan peaks. Somewhere on the dusk road, 2 riders with a folded paper in a saddlebag made camp for the night and checked the loads in their rifles by firelight, and they would be in Silverton by Wednesday and at the Jenkins spread by Friday, and after the Jenkins spread, there was only 1 more road worth riding, and it went straight to Caleb Whitaker's creek. Wednesday came and went with no riders on the road. Thursday came and went the same. By Friday, Nell Hartwell had stopped flinching every time the yellow dog barked, and by Saturday, she had stopped looking down the pine road at all, which is, of course, exactly when a man like Silas Crow prefers to arrive. It was 4:15 in the afternoon, on the 8th day of her month. Jonah Briggs was fixing a pulley at the well. Eli Turner was out on the south pasture with half the herd. Caleb was in the barn shoeing Duke's off hind, and Nell was on the porch, snapping beans into a yellow crockery bowl. The dog lifted his head. The dog did not growl. The dog stood up. That was what did it. Not a bark, not a snarl. Just the slow, careful way the old yellow dog came up off the boards and set himself foursquare between Nell and the road, with his hackles standing up one vertebra at a time. Nell set the bowl down. Jonah. I see them, ma'am. How many? 3. How far? 1/4 mile. Get Caleb. Ma'am, I am not leaving this porch till your back is in that house. She stood up. The beans were still in her lap. They scattered across the boards, and nobody bent to pick them up. Jonah Briggs. Ma'am. Get Caleb, now. He went. She did not go into the house. She picked up the crockery bowl off the porch rail, and she carried it inside, and she set it on the kitchen table, and she walked through to the back room, and she took the Colt out from under the pillow where Caleb had made her promise to keep it, and she came back to the main room, and she stood in the middle of the kitchen floor with the revolver in both hands, and she waited. Caleb came through the back door 3 minutes later with hammer in one hand still, and Jonah a half step behind him. Nell? I am not hiding Caleb. Yes, you are. No. Nell Hartwell. Caleb Whitaker. I have hid in creeks and haylofts and back rooms in the dark under a Pullman berth for 7 days running. I am done hiding. I will stand in this kitchen with this gun, and I will listen through this wall, and when it is time, I will step out onto that porch. But I am done hiding, cowboy. Do you hear me? He heard her. He did not like it. He heard her. All right. All right. All right. You stand in this kitchen. You keep that Colt low. You listen through the wall. When I call your name, not before you come out, not a second before Nell. You hear me? I hear you. Say it. When you call my name. Not before. Not before. Good. He turned to Jonah. Rifle on the loft ladder. Eli. South pasture, 15 minutes at a gallop. Ring the bell. Boss, if I ring the bell? If you ring the bell, they will know we are ready. I want them to know. Ring it. Jonah went. A moment later, the bell at the barn rang 4 hard strokes. 4 strokes meant ride in, ride fast, ride armed. Eli would be coming. Caleb turned back to Nell. Look at me. She looked. Whatever he says out there, it is a lie. Whatever paper he has, it is forged. Whatever name he calls you, it is not yours. You are Eleanor Hartwell. You are a free woman. You are on my porch by your own choice. Say it back. I am Eleanor Hartwell. Again. I am a free woman. Again. I am on this porch by my own choice. Good. Now stand. He walked out onto the porch. The 3 riders came up the last 1/4 mile at a slow, easy walk, the way men ride when they are not in a hurry, because they have already decided how a thing is going to end. Caleb marked them as they came. The 2 at the flanks were hired. Weathered, quiet eyes that had done this before. The one in the middle wore a black frock coat in 90-degree heat, which told Caleb most of what he needed to know before the man even opened his mouth. They reined up 20 feet from the porch. Caleb Whitaker. Mister? Silas Crow. Figured. Then you know why I'm here. Figure that too. Silas Crow was 59 years old, and he looked every one of them, and then a few more for spite. He had the soft, puffy face of a man who had not done an honest day's labor since he was 17 years old, and the flat, cold eyes of a man who had done a great many dishonest ones and slept every night sound. He took off his hat. He did not dismount. Then this need not take long, Mr. Whitaker. I have come for my wife. Caleb did not answer. She is a small creature. Auburn hair. 23 years on her last birthday. Scar on the inside of her left wrist from a kitchen burn she took as a child. I have been told she has been on your ranch 8 days. Told by who? That is not your concern. It is my concern, Mr. Crow, if somebody on my payroll has been talking. So I will ask you again, civil. Who told you she was on my ranch? Crow smiled. It was a thin, pleased smile. A man at the Jenkins spread mentioned a new cousin of yours up from Missouri. Auburn hair, quiet, new to ranch work. My men asked no further questions. They simply rode. Caleb did not look at Jonah. Jonah did not look at Caleb. Neither of them needed to. The leak was at Jenkins, not in this house. My cousin is from Missouri. Your cousin, Mr. Whitaker, is my wife. She signed no paper in my presence. She signed it before she came to you. Then show it. Crow reached into the inside of his frock coat, and one of the flank riders let his hand drift a half-inch toward his holster, and Jonah up in the barn loft levered around into the rifle chamber, loud enough that every man in the yard heard it go home. The flank rider stopped drifting. Crow smiled again. Nervous man you got up there, Whitaker. He is not nervous. He is patient. Show the paper. Crow held out a folded sheet. Walk it to the porch, Mr. Crow. I am not coming down into the yard to take it from horseback. Crow's smile went flat. You will speak to me, sir, the way a man speaks to a man that has the law on his side. I will speak to you the way a man speaks to a man that rode onto his land uninvited. Walk the paper up or write it back to wherever you had it printed. A long beat. Crow dismounted. He climbed the 3 porch steps slowly, like a man who wanted every second of it remembered. He handed the paper across. Caleb took it. He did not open it. He held it. Mr. Crow. Mr. Whitaker. Before I read this, I am going to tell you 3 things. First, I do not know you. Second, I do not like you. Third, you are standing on a porch I built with my own hands from trees I felled with my own axe on land I bought from the United States government, with money I earned a silver dollar at a time. You will mind your manners on it, or you will come down off it. Am I understood? Read the paper, Whitaker. He read the paper. It was well done. Better than he had expected. The hand was good. The stamp was passable. The witness signatures were 2 names he did not know. Eleanor Hartwell's own signature at the bottom was in a shaky, reluctant hand that did not quite match the copy of her name he had seen in the family Bible she had brought out of her skirt pocket on the second night. He folded it. He held it out. That signature is forged. That signature is hers. The lean is wrong. The crossbar on the T goes left. Hers goes right. You are an expert in handwriting, Mr. Whitaker. No, sir. I am an expert in one woman's writing. That is enough for this afternoon. Crow's smile was gone now. I am going to ask you, Mr. Whitaker, one time to produce my wife. After that, I will ride to Durango and return Monday morning with the sheriff and a writ, and you will produce her regardless, and you will produce her in irons for theft of a married woman, and I will see this ranch sold at auction before the snow. Do we understand one another? Mister, I understand you fine. You do not understand me yet. Try me. The woman you are calling your wife is not in this house. Is that so? She is on that porch, behind you, by her own choice, which you would know if you had the courage to turn around. Silas Crow turned around. Nell Hartwell was standing in the open doorway of the house. She had the Colt in her right hand pointed at the boards of the porch safe. Her left hand was on the door frame. Her shoulders were square. Her chin was up. She did not look like the woman who had been washing blood out of a sleeve in a creek 9 days before. She looked like somebody had taken that woman and built a wall around her, and the wall had held. Eleanor. Mr. Crow. Come down off the porch, girl. No. Come to the horse. No. I have ridden a long way. I have run farther. The 2 flank riders shifted in their saddles. Jonah Briggs's rifle up in the loft did not shift at all. Eleanor. Crow said softer the way a man speaks to an animal he is trying to get a rope around. This is embarrassing, for me, for you, for this cowboy who has clearly filled your head with notions. You are my wife. I have your paper. The law is the law even out here in this God-forsaken country. I am not your wife. The paper is a lie. You wrote it, or you paid a man to write it. You brought it here today because you thought a cowboy on a quiet ranch would fold when a frock coat and 2 rifles rode up his road. You are wrong, Mr. Crow. Girl. Do not call me girl. Eleanor. Miss Hartwell. That one landed. Crow's jaw worked. Miss Hartwell. Thank you. Miss Hartwell, I have been patient. I have been more than patient. I paid your guardian $600 against your future. I bought a dress. I engaged a preacher. You ran out a window and set fire to my curtains, and I have not in all the weeks since once raised a hand to your name in Durango. I have let it be known that my young bride was taken poorly and sent east to her aunt. I have protected your reputation. You protected your own. I protected both. You came to my room, Silas Crow. A hush fell over the porch. You came to my room the night before the wedding. You said the papers were a formality. You said I was already yours. You put your hand on my throat. I swung the lamp. The curtains caught. I went out the window. If you tell this story any other way, you are telling a lie in front of God and these men, and I am telling the truth, and we will see which of us the circuit judge in Silverton believes when he hears it from my own mouth. The blood went out of Silas Crow's face in one long, slow drain. You will not take that story to a judge. I will take it to any man that will listen. Miss Hartwell, I am warning you now, very plain. If you do not come off that porch in the next 30 seconds, I will have no choice but to ride to Durango, and I will return not with a sheriff, but with a posse. 12 men, sworn deputies. You will be brought off this porch in a bedsheet if you make me do it that way. Do you hear me? And this cowboy and his hired men will be laid out in the yard beside you. Caleb took one step forward. Mr. Crow. Whitaker, you just threatened to shoot a woman on my porch. I threatened nothing of the kind. You said a bedsheet. A bedsheet is for the dead. I heard you plain. Jonah heard you plain. She heard you plain. You just threatened in the open air on my land to kill a woman that told you no. And you did it in front of 3 witnesses. Now I am going to tell you what happens next. He walked down off the porch. He walked until he was 4 feet from Silas Crow, and he stopped. You are going to get on your horse. You are going to ride down my road. You are not going to ride to Durango for a sheriff, because any sheriff you bring back here now is going to hear from my mouth what you just said in mine. You are going to go home. You are going to burn that paper. And you are going to pray Silas Crow every night for the rest of your natural life that I never cross the Animus River into your town. Because if I do, sir, it will not be with a rifle. It will be with her story and mine and Jonah's and the other 50 women in Durango that have been passed through your saloons and never came back out, and I will not need a bullet to finish you. Am I understood? Silas Crow stared at him. Silas Crow was not a brave man. Brave men do not run saloons in river towns. Brave men do not buy 23-year-old orphans from drunk cousins. But cornered men sometimes do foolish things. And Silas Crow was cornered now in a way he had not been cornered in 20 years. He moved fast for a man his age. He stepped around Caleb, not toward him, and he went for Nell. He got 2 strides up the porch steps. Nell raised the Colt. Stop! Eleanor! Stop! He did not stop. She fired. The bullet hit the boards of the porch an inch in front of his left boot. Splinters flew. The shot echoed off the barn and off the ridge behind the creek, and off some further place where echoes go when they have finished their work in the world, and Silas Crow stopped because there is a difference between a woman you can threaten and a woman who has just put a .45 caliber hole in the floorboard 1 inch from your toe, and he had just learned it. The next one, Nell said, and her voice did not shake. Not 1 inch is in your knee. Silas Crow, I did not know I could do that until 6 days ago. I know now. Step back off the porch. He stepped back. Off the porch, sir. He stepped down. Off the step. He stepped down again. Off the boards. Into the dust. Yes, there. Now you look up at me. He looked up at her. From the loft, Jonah Briggs called down flat and clear. Mr. Crow, the man on the ridge behind you with the long rifle is our third hand, Eli Turner. He rode in hard during the reading of your paper. If either of your men moves for a holster, he will drop them out of the saddle at 200 yards. He has done it before on coyotes. You are a larger target." The two flank riders had indeed not moved. Now they raised their hands very slowly, without being asked, and they set both hands on the pommels of their saddles, palms down and flat, and they held them there. Silas Crow looked at his own men. Silas Crow looked at the loft. Silas Crow looked at Nell Hartwell on the porch, with a smoking Colt held dead level on his face. "You will regret this, Miss Hartwell." "I regret 7 years of you already, Mr. Crow. One more will not break me. I will ride to Durango." "Ride. I will return." "Return. This is not finished. It was never started. You only thought it was." He backed 3 more steps. He got to his horse. He mounted. The two flank riders, very careful, very slow, turned their horses. All 3 rode back down the pine road at a walk, because a trot would have looked like running, and Silas Crow was a man who could not have borne that. Nobody on the porch spoke until the 3 riders were out of sight past the first bend. Then Nell lowered the Colt. Her hand began to shake. Her whole arm began to shake. She sat down on the top step of the porch very hard, and she put the Colt on the boards beside her, and she put her face down into both of her hands, and she did not cry, but she made one long low sound that was not quite a sob and not quite a laugh, and Caleb Whitaker climbed the 3 steps and sat down beside her, not touching her close, but not touching, and he stayed there. "Nell, do not. Nell, do not say anything kind to me right now, Caleb, or I will come apart." "All right. Just sit." "All right." He sat. After a long time, she lifted her face. "Did I kill him?" "No, ma'am." "Good. You hit the floor, Nell. 1 inch in front of his boot." "Good. Did you mean to hit the floor?" She thought about it. "I do not rightly know, cowboy." "Either way, Nell Hartwell, it was the finest shooting I have seen on this porch in my life." "Caleb." "Ma'am, he will come back." "Yes, ma'am, he will." "With more men." "Yes, ma'am." "And paper, real paper this time. Maybe. Bought paper." "Likely." "Then we cannot stay here." "No, ma'am, I reckon we cannot." She looked out down the pine road where the dust of 3 horses was finally settling. "Silverton," she said. "There is a judge there. Circuit rides through on the first Tuesday. I heard Jonah say it last Sunday over supper. Tuesday is 4 days. Then we ride Monday. We ride Sunday night." She turned her head. "Sunday night, Caleb. At moonrise, not before. Why Sunday?" "Because a man like Crow will expect us to run by daylight Monday. We will already be half to Silverton by then." She looked at him a long moment. "You have been thinking about this all week." "Every hour, Nell?" "Without telling me." "I had no plan to use. Now I do." She picked up the Colt off the boards. She weighed it in her palm. She looked at it like it was a thing that belonged to her now, and not a thing she was only borrowing. "Sunday night then, cowboy." "Sunday night." And out past the corral, out past the pine road, the yellow dog walked back up the steps and laid his head across Nell Hartwell's boot, and she put her free hand down into the thick of his fur and she held on. Sunday came slow. It came the way bad weather comes on a wind you can feel but cannot yet see. By noon, Nell Hartwell had packed 1 canvas bag with 2 shirts, the Colt 40 rounds, a tintype of her mother, and the Hartwell family Bible. By 2, she had packed it again because she did not like the order of the first packing. By 4, she had unpacked it and put everything back a 3rd time, and she stood in the back room with the bag at her feet, and her hands pressed flat to the sides of her own face, because her heart had been going too fast for about 11 straight hours, and she did not know how to make it slow down. Caleb knocked once on the open doorframe. "Nell?" "I am ready." "You are not ready. You have been ready since 10 this morning. You are pacing." "I am not pacing." "You have worn a track into the rag rug." She looked down at the rug. She looked up at him. I am pacing. Eat something. I cannot. Eat half of something. Caleb. Nell, we have 9 miles to the Animus Crossing, then 21 to Silverton, in the dark, on bad road, through summer storms if the sky keeps up like this. You are not riding any of it on an empty stomach. Eat half of something, or I will saddle a second horse for the bread I am about to strap across its back, because you will not be walking off this ranch on a feint. She ate half of something. They rode at 8 past moonrise. 4 horses. Duke carried Caleb. A bay gelding called Sage carried Nell. Jonah and Eli rode the 2-pack animals, each with a Winchester across the saddle horn, and each with orders that were short and clear. If riders came up the road from the east, Jonah would turn back and hold the ranch. If riders came up from the south, Eli would turn back and do the same. If riders came up the ridge from the north, which was the direction nobody came from because nobody could, they would all 4 ride for the tree line and make a stand. Nobody came up the ridge from the north. Something worse happened instead. 3 miles out from the ranch at the first hard bend in the pine road, Eli's pack horse went down. It did not stumble. It did not shy. It went down all at once the way a horse goes down when something is broken inside it, and Eli was off and beside it before the dust had even settled. Boss? What is it? Snake bit maybe, or colic. He ain't getting up, Caleb. He is trying. He ain't getting up. Can you ride him? No, sir. Can you shoot him? A long pause. Yes, sir. Do it quick, then up behind Jonah. We ride. The shot cracked once over the pines. Then they rode. Nell did not speak for the next 2 miles. Her knuckles on Sage's reins had gone white again, the way they had gone white on the stove spoon 8 days back, and Caleb watched her out of the corner of his eye and did not push her to speak, because a person who is holding themselves together by the knuckles does not need a conversation. They need a reason to keep riding. He gave her one. Nell. Caleb? Tell me about your mother. What? Tell me about your mother. It is 26 more miles. Tell me something about her. Anything. She rode 3 more strides before she answered. She played piano. Any good? Terrible. Go on. She would not take lessons. She said lessons would ruin her ear. She could not hold a key in one hand while she sang in the other. She sang in the kitchen with flour on her nose, and my father would come in from the barn and lean on the doorframe and not say a word until she was done, because if he spoke she would stop and he would rather hear bad piano than silence for the rest of his natural life. What did she sing? Shenandoah mostly, and the Tennessee Waltz when she was feeling sorry for herself. And when she was happy. Oh, Susanna, with her own words to it, rude ones. She was a rude woman when the mood took her, Caleb. I do not remember my father laughing very often, but when he laughed it was at my mother, and it was from his belly, and it was always in the kitchen, and it always smelled like flour. Caleb did not speak for a while after that. You have been quiet about her, he said finally. I have been quiet about a lot of things. Why tell me now? Because if I die in the next 23 miles, cowboy, I do not want the last person who knew her in this world to have been Silas Crow. He did not answer that one either. He reined Duke a half-step closer to Sage, so that his stirrup brushed hers, and they rode on through the rising dark. At the Animus, crossing the river was higher than it ought to have been. The storms up in the San Juans had melted snow 10 days out of season, and the water ran fast and brown and knee-deep on a horse where it ought to have been ankle-deep. Caleb. I see it. Can we cross? We can. We will not like it. Caleb. Ma'am, if I come off that horse in the middle of that water, you keep riding. You do not come back for me. You get to Silverton. You tell the judge my story. Do you hear me? Nell. Do you hear me? I hear you, and I am not agreeing to it, and if you come off that horse in the middle of that water, Eleanor Hartwell, I will be in it beside you in 1/2 of 1 second. So hold your reins and point Sage straight and ride like somebody you love is on the other side of it. There is nobody I love on the other side of it, Caleb. There is Nell. It is a woman who lived through this. You are going to meet her on the far bank. Ride to her. She rode to her. Sage took the water hard. He went in up to his chest on the second stride and up to his shoulder on the fourth, and for 3 long strides in the middle. Nell was standing in her stirrups with the river foaming white around Sage's neck. And then the bay's hooves hit rock again, and he came up out of it, blowing and dripping on the far bank. And Nell Hartwell was still in the saddle, and she was laughing low and breathless, the first real laugh Caleb had heard out of her in the 9 days since the creek. Caleb. Ma'am? I did it. Yes, ma'am. I did not come off. No, ma'am. You did not. I rode a river. Yes, Nell. You rode a river. Do you think my mother rode rivers? I think your mother, ma'am, is standing on the far bank of every river you will ever ride, waving her flower-dusted hand. And I think you just rode to her, and I think she just smiled. She stopped laughing. She did not cry. But something in her face broke loose and settled into a different shape, the way a bone sets right after it has been broken wrong for years. And Caleb saw it set, and he kept his mouth shut for another 2 miles. They made Silverton by dawn. Jonah went ahead to the livery. Eli, still riding double behind him, went with. Caleb and Nell rode straight to the courthouse, which was not a courthouse yet, but only the upper story of the mercantile, with a hand-lettered sign on the door. And they tied Duke and Sage to the rail, and they climbed the outside stair, and they sat on the top landing in the cold morning air to wait. The circuit judge was a man named Aaron Beale. He was 61 years old. He had 3 daughters. He had been practicing law in one territory or another for 38 years, and Caleb had known him for 9 of them, because Aaron Beale was the judge that had signed the patent on Caleb's ranch when Caleb was 26 years old, and had walked into a territorial office with a saddlebag of gold and a face full of stubble and a plan. Judge Beale arrived at 8:30. He looked at Caleb. He looked at Nell. He looked at Caleb again. Whitaker. Judge. It is 6 in the morning. It is 8:30, sir. It is 6 in the morning to a man that rode in from Pagosa Wells yesterday after supper. Yes, sir, I am aware. Who is the lady? Miss Eleanor Hartwell, sir, of Durango, lately of my ranch. By her own choice, sir. By her own choice. Yes, sir. Judge Beale unlocked the door. He did not invite them in. He simply walked in, and Caleb and Nell followed, and he set his coat on the rack and his hat on the coat and sat down behind a pine desk with a green blotter, and he looked at Nell Hartwell with eyes that had heard every story the West had to tell, and still somehow had room for one more. Miss Hartwell. Sir. Tell me. She told him. She told him plain. She did not cry. She did not decorate it. She said the name Martin Pike, and she said the number $600, and she said the name Silas Crow, and she said the word window, and the word lamp, and the word curtains. And she said the words 4 nights of running, and she laid on his desk the forged contract Caleb had taken out of Crow's hand on the porch 6 days before, and she said, "That signature, sir, is not mine, and I will write my true signature 3 times on your blotter right now so you can see it for yourself." She wrote it 3 times. The judge looked at the forgery. The judge looked at the 3 true signatures. The judge looked up. Miss Hartwell, where is Martin Pike now? Durango, sir, to my knowledge. And Silas Crow. Also Durango, sir, with threats to return to the Whitaker ranch with a posse. With a posse. 12 men, he said, sir, sworn deputies. Judge Beale leaned back in his chair. 12 sworn deputies out of Durango. Miss Hartwell would be every deputy on the La Plata County payroll, and then 4 more that do not exist. I know the sheriff of La Plata County. His name is Harlan Moss. He has been in my court 9 times in 6 years. He has lost 8 of them. He will not ride out of Durango on a forged paper for a saloon keeper, and if he does, he will ride back in irons behind my own bailiff. You have my word on that. Do you hear me? Yes, sir. Good. Now we are going to need a witness. Nell went very still. Sir, there was no witness to what he did in my room. There is never a witness to what is done in a room, Miss Hartwell. I am speaking of a witness to the contract. You say it was signed before witnesses. Crow's signatures here claim 2 witnesses. Jack Reedy, Thomas Vance. Do you know these men? I know Jack Reedy, sir. Would Jack Reedy tell the truth under oath? Nell hesitated. Sir Jack Reedy was a bartender at Crow's First Saloon for 11 years. He was turned out in March because he refused to water the whiskey past 3 parts to 1. He lives now in a room above the Silverton blacksmith, sir, because he is married to the blacksmith's widow's daughter. I learned this from the laundress at the Durango Hotel 2 days before I ran. Judge Beale blinked once. You are telling me the witness on this forged contract currently lives 6 blocks from this desk? Yes, sir. Mr. Whitaker. Sir? Go find Jack Reedy. Caleb went. He came back 41 minutes later with Jack Reedy, who was 49 years old, and who had not shaved in 3 days, and who, upon being asked by Judge Aaron Beale whether he had witnessed the signing of a marriage contract between Silas Crow and Eleanor Hartwell on the 12th of June in Durango, spat once onto the courthouse floor and said, "No, sir, Your Honor, I did not. I was tending bar in Crow's front room on the 12th of June, sir, and I was tending bar in Crow's front room on the 13th, and I was tending bar in Crow's front room on every day of June, right up to the 22nd of the month, when Crow threw me out on the boardwalk for watering his whiskey to suit my own conscience, and that is my sworn statement, sir, and I will put my X on it, or my name, whichever the court prefers. And I will ride to Durango beside Miss Hartwell here, if the court wants me to say it to Silas Crow's face, sir, because I have been waiting on that moment for 3 months." Judge Beale looked at Jack Reedy for a long time. "Mr. Reedy, your name will suffice. Sit down, sir. A clerk will take your statement." Jack Reedy sat down. At 11 that morning, Judge Aaron Beale issued an order declaring the contract between Silas Crow and Eleanor Hartwell null and void for reason of forgery and coercion. At 11:15, he issued a second order declaring the guardianship of Martin Pike terminated by reason of material breach of fiduciary duty against a minor orphan of the territory. At 20 minutes to noon, he wrote a letter in his own hand to Sheriff Harlan Moss of La Plata County to be delivered that same afternoon by federal rider, and he read the letter aloud to Caleb and Nell and Jack Reedy before he sealed it. In plain terms, the letter said this: Eleanor Hartwell is a free woman under the laws of this territory. She will not be approached, addressed, contracted, or pursued by any party. Any man found to violate this order, including but not limited to Silas Crow and Martin Pike, is to be arrested on sight and transported to my chambers for immediate trial. This order is signed this day under my hand in the full authority of the United States Circuit Court. Nell did not cry when he read it. She cried when he handed it to her, and she held it in her own 2 hands, and she looked at her own name on the paper, and she read the word free out loud once to herself, and then she put the paper down carefully on the blotter, because her hands had started to shake too hard to hold it. Miss Hartwell. Sir? You are free. Yes, sir. Do you understand that? I am beginning to, sir. It will take some time. Yes, sir. Take it. She took it. They walked back down the outside stair of the Mercantile at 12:45 in the afternoon, and the Colorado sun was high and hard and clean, and Caleb Whitaker stopped at the bottom of the stair and turned to Nell Hartwell, with the judge's letter folded in her hand, and he said the thing he had been rehearsing very quietly for 3 days and 3 nights. Nell. Caleb, I have $90 in my saddlebag. It is not much. It is what I had in the house when we rode. There is more at the bank, and I can wire for it inside of an hour. The bay sage is yours. He is a good horse, not fast, steady. He will not throw you, and he will not founder on a long ride. I have a letter of reference here in my coat signed this morning by Judge Beale at my own request that will open any honest door between here and San Francisco. The stage for Denver leaves Silverton at 4 this afternoon. The stage for Salt Lake leaves at 6. She stared at him. Caleb. Nell. What are you doing? I am telling you what I promised you I would tell you the day you walked up my porch step. You are free. You have been free since Judge Beale signed that paper at 11 this morning. You have money. You have a horse. You have a letter. You have in a few hours 2 stages going in 2 different directions. I will not ask you to stay. I will not ask you to go. I will saddle any horse you point at, and I will wave from the dust. Caleb Whitaker. Ma'am. You are letting me go. I am not letting you do anything, Nell. You are not mine to let or to keep. I am telling you the roads that are open. You pick the one you ride." She looked at him for a long, long time. She looked at the street. She looked at the stage office at the far end of the block, where a handwritten sign on the door read, "Denver, 4 p.m., Salt Lake, 6 p.m., reservations inside." She looked at her own hands. She looked back at him. "Caleb." "Nell, no man has ever given me a road and not walked it with me." "I will walk any road you choose, Nell. That is not the same as choosing it for you." "I know that." "Then choose." "I am choosing." "Choose out loud, Nell, so I hear it and you hear it both." She drew a long breath. "I am going back." "Back where?" "To the ranch." "Nell, not because I am afraid of the stage. Not because I am afraid of Denver. Not because of you, Caleb Whitaker. Because I swear to God and to Judge Beale and to Jack Reedy back up those stairs that I am not choosing you. Not yet. Not today. Do you hear me?" "I hear you. I am choosing the ranch. I am choosing the chickens and the calf and the laundry pot and the rag rug I paced a track into this morning. I am choosing a place where, for the first time in my life, nobody has asked me to be anybody but myself. I am going to work there. For wages. Paid weekly. I will keep my own money. I will sleep behind my own locked door. I will go to town when I choose, and I will stay home when I choose, and if after a summer of that, I want to stay for a fall, I will stay for a fall. And if I want to ride out on the first snow, I will ride out on the first snow, and you, cowboy, will saddle my horse and wave from the dust. Those are my terms. Those are fine terms, Nell Hartwell. You agree to them." "I agreed to them the day I met you at the creek." "Then say it." "I, Caleb Whitaker, agree to the terms." "Say my whole name." "I, Caleb Whitaker, agree to the terms of Eleanor Hartwell, formerly of Durango, presently of Silverton, and tonight, if she will ride with me, of the Whitaker Ranch, Animas County, Colorado Territory." She smiled. It was not half a smile this time. It was a whole one. It came up out of her the way the first real laugh had come up out of her in the middle of the swollen Animas that dawn, and it changed her face and it changed his, and for one single clean second on that mercantile step, nothing in the world was chasing either of them anywhere. "Cowboy." "Ma'am." "Saddle the horses." "Yes, ma'am." "We are going home." He saddled the horses. They rode out of Silverton at 2 in the afternoon, with Jonah ahead and Eli behind, and Jack Reedy's sworn statement, and Judge Beale's signed order folded together in the breast pocket of Nell Hartwell's mended shirt, and the long pine road ran back east under Duke's hooves and Sage's hooves, and somewhere along the 14th mile of it, with the sun slanting low across her shoulders, Nell turned in her saddle and looked at Caleb and said quiet, almost to herself, "Mother, I rode a river this morning. I signed my own name 3 times on a judge's blotter. I am going home to a ranch I chose. You would have liked it. You would have sung." And out past the pines, out past the ridge, the first star came up over the San Juan peaks, and the yellow dog 2 miles off lifted his head at the sound of 2 familiar horses on the road, and he did not growl. He stood up, and he began to wag. The yellow dog wagged his tail all the way up to the porch, and Nell Hartwell climbed down off Sage and sat right down on the top step in her travel clothes, and put both arms around his neck and pressed her face into his fur, and she did not say a word for a full 2 minutes. Caleb stood at the rail with Duke's reins in one hand, and he did not say a word either. Some homecomings do not need words. They only need a step, a dog, and a woman brave enough to sit down on the first one. Jonah put the horses up. Eli stoked the stove. By sundown of that first day back, the Whitaker Ranch was quiet in a way it had not been quiet in 3 weeks, and Nell Hartwell walked through her own backroom door and slid the lock behind her, and she slept 14 straight hours, and she did not dream. On the second morning, she came out at dawn and said, "Caleb." "Ma'am." "The chickens have gotten into the garden." "I know it." "The calf's fetlock is healing clean." "I know it." "Your laundry pot needs scouring." "I know it." And the rag rug in my room has a track worn in it that I am embarrassed by. Nell? Yes? Welcome home. Thank you, cowboy. She went to work. That first month, she did not call him anything but Whitaker in front of the men, and Caleb in the kitchen, and once late by the barn door, when she thought he was not listening. Caleb Whitaker, you fool, you have gone and fallen all the way in. And she did not know yet that he had heard her, and he did not tell her, because a man who tells a woman that he has heard her say such a thing while she is still learning. The shape of her own choosing is a man who has not listened to one word his own mother said to him on her deathbed. He let her do the choosing. She chose slow. By August, she was riding out with Eli in the mornings to check the south fence. By the end of August, she could rope a calf on the second throw. By September, she had started a kitchen garden 3 times the size of the one Caleb had kept, with rows of onions and beets and winter squash, and a little patch of herbs her mother had used to grow in a window box in Durango back when there had been a window and a mother and a box. By October, she had taken the judge's letter out of her breast pocket for the last time and folded it into the back of the Hartwell Bible, and she had not touched it again because she no longer needed to look at a paper to know what she was. Silas Crow did not come back. That is the quiet truth of it. He did not come back. Judge Aaron Beale's letter rode to Durango on a federal horse on the afternoon of the order, and by sundown of that same day, Sheriff Harlan Moss had read it twice in his own office, and by sundown of the next day, he had paid a personal visit to the back room of Silas Crow's second saloon, and he had said 4 sentences, and then he had walked out. Nobody in Durango ever learned exactly what those 4 sentences were. But the following morning, Silas Crow put his first saloon up for sale, and the morning after that, he put his second saloon up for sale, and by the end of September, he had left Durango on the east stage with 2 trunks and a bank draft, and he did not return. Martin Pike, who was a smaller animal and a more cowardly one, rode out of town 3 days after Crow in the opposite direction, and nobody mourned him. Certain women in Durango, in the weeks after he left, began to speak at their own kitchen tables about things that had happened in the Pike house during the years of his guardianships, and their husbands, who were mostly good men who had only been quiet too long, began to listen, and things began to change in Durango that had not been allowed to change in 20 years. And it was said in certain circles that the whole turning of it had begun with a runaway girl and a cowboy and a judge in an upstairs mercantile in Silverton. And the woman who was said to have begun it never heard herself spoken of that way because she was 80 miles north and busy with her onions. By first snow that year, something was shifting on the Whitaker ranch. Nell came in from the barn one November evening and found Caleb at the kitchen table with his hands wrapped around a coffee cup, and she sat down across from him, and she said, "Caleb." "Ma'am." "I have a question to put to you." "Put it." "When you lay on that porch that first night with the Winchester across your knees, and I was behind the door with a chair against the knob, what were you thinking?" He considered it. "I was thinking, Nell, that the woman in that room had not yet decided whether I was kind or only careful, and that there was no way for her to tell the difference in the dark, and that the only thing I could do about it was sit on the porch until morning so she could see me in the daylight and decide for herself." "You sat on the porch for me to see you." "I sat on the porch because I did not want you to sit up all night wondering if I was going to come through the door." She looked at him for a long time. "Caleb Whitaker." "Ma'am?" "I think I would like to be courted." The coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. "Courted. Properly. The way my father courted my mother. Slow. In the kitchen. With flour. With my own piano one day if I ever learned to play one. With nobody asking me to be anything but myself. Do you know how to court a woman that way, cowboy?" Nell Hartwell. "I have been reading about it in books for 19 years, waiting on the chance." "Then start." He started. He brought her coffee in the mornings. He brought her wildflowers from the north pasture in June of the following year, and asters in September, and one late October afternoon, a sprig of pine with a red ribbon on it, because he had nothing else, and because she had laughed out loud when he handed it to her, which was the point. He took her to church in Silverton twice a month on Sundays, Not because either of them was especially religious, but because Judge Aaron Beale sat in the third pew with his 3 daughters, and because Judge Beale liked to stand up after the service and shake Caleb's hand hard and ask in front of God and the congregation how Miss Hartwell was keeping, so that every man in Silverton would hear the name Miss Hartwell spoken out loud in the authority of the court, until there was not one human being for 60 miles who did not know that Eleanor Hartwell belonged to nobody and walked where she chose. On a Tuesday in May of the year after Caleb Whitaker proposed to her at the creek. Not in the creek. At the creek, 3 paces from the water, on a flat rock, he had swept clean of pine needles that morning with his own hat. Nell. Caleb. I have something to ask you. I thought you might. I would like for us to be married. Yes. I had a speech. Give it. It was a long one. Shorten it. I would like for us to be married. I will not own you. I will not keep you. I will stand beside you the way my mother told me, a man stands beside the weather, and if the weather blows east one day, I will follow it east, and if it blows west, I will follow it west, and if one day it stands still, I will stand still with it. That is the speech, Nell. That is the whole speech. It is not long. It is only true. Yes, she said again. You are sure. I am sure. You have the right to not be sure. I know I do. That is why I am sure, cowboy, because I have the right not to be. They were married on the 22nd of June, 1880, on the porch of the Whitaker Ranch by Judge Aaron Beale, in front of Jonah Briggs and Eli Turner and Jack Reedy, who had come up from Silverton in his one good coat, and a small delegation of 7 women from Durango, who had traveled 3 days to be there, none of whom Nell had ever met, all of whom had heard the story, and all of whom, after the ceremony, came up one by one, and took Nell's hand in both of theirs, and said variations of the same sentence, which amounted in every case to thank you. Nell did not understand until the 5th woman what she was being thanked for. She understood by the 7th. She sat down on the top step of the porch after the last of them had gone inside for cake, and she did not cry. She had not cried at the vows. She had not cried at the ring. She cried on that step quiet with her hands in her lap, and Caleb sat down beside her and did not touch her, and after a while she said, Cowboy. Ma'am, I did not know until just now that there were other women. There are always other women, Nell. I thought it was only me. It is never only one. Then what do? We live, Nell. We live loud, and we live honest. And we live in a house where the door locks from the inside, and we let the other women, wherever they are, hear that there is such a house, and that it has a porch, and that the porch has a step, and that the step is always open to them. She nodded slowly. Then we are going to need a bigger house, Caleb. He laughed. Not today, ma'am. No, not today, but in time. In time came faster than either of them expected. The first woman arrived in the fall of that same year. Her name was Delia, and she came up the pine road on a borrowed mule with a black eye and a 7-year-old son, and she stopped at the gate and said, Is this the Whitaker place? And Nell was in the yard with a basket of wet laundry, and Nell set the basket down, and Nell said, Yes, come in. The water is hot. The child can have cornbread while you wash. And she did not ask Delia a single question, and Delia stayed 9 weeks. And then Delia left on a stage for her sister's place in Cheyenne. And she left with $80 in her apron that Nell had put there without comment, and the child left with a pair of boots that Eli Turner had cobbled in the bunkhouse on his own time, out of his own leather, and neither of them ever came back, and that was the shape of it. They were not supposed to come back. They were supposed to go on. In 1882, Caleb built the second house. It was a small one, 2 rooms. Behind the barn, out of sight of the pine road, with a door that locked from the inside and a window that did not face the road. He called it the guest house. Nobody on the ranch ever called it that. Jonah Briggs called it the way station. Eli Turner called it the north room. The women who stayed in it over the years called it almost always the first night I slept. By 1885, Nell Whitaker had started teaching. It began with Delia's boy, back that one September, and then with 2 of the Jenkins grandchildren, and then with 4 children from the settlement 10 miles north, and by the end of 1885, there were 11 children coming to the Whitaker Ranch on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Nell taught them reading in the morning and arithmetic before the midday meal, and after the meal she taught the girls to shoot. Not to be violent. She told them every first lesson standing by the long flat rock behind the barn with a row of tin cans on the fence rail. To be unafraid. There is a difference, and I will show it to you by sundown. By 1888, the settlement had a proper schoolhouse built on land. Caleb donated with Nell's name on the deed beside his, and a teacher named Miss Harriet Owen, who had come out from Boston on Nell's own letter of invitation. And Nell stopped teaching the children of strangers, and began instead to teach one particular child who was 3 years old, and auburn-haired, and named Mary, after Nell's mother. Mary Whitaker was born in the spring of 1885. She was born in the back room of the ranch house on the same bed Nell had slept in the first night behind the same door that locked from the inside, and she was caught by the hands of a Ute midwife named Grandmother Stands in Water, who had walked the 11 miles up from the settlement with her own 2 feet because she did not trust horses, and who stayed in the house for 3 days afterward, and pronounced Mary at the end of the 3rd day to be, quote, a child who will argue with her own shadow and win, end quote, which turned out to be exactly correct. Mary was followed in 1887 by a brother named Thomas, after Nell's father, and in 1890 by a sister named Susanna, after nobody in particular, because Nell had decided that some children should arrive in the world owing their name to no ghost at all. The ranch grew. The herd grew. The horse breeding program Caleb started in 1884 produced by 1891. The finest working ponies between the Animas and the San Juan and Byers came from as far east as Kansas and as far west as Nevada, and the Whitaker brand, a capital W with a small H curled inside it, for Whitaker and Hartwell became known in certain circles as a brand you could trust, even if you had never met the man who owned it, because his wife had signed the bill of sale, and his wife did not put her name on anything that was not true. Years passed. Jonah Briggs died in the winter of 1896 of pneumonia at the age of 63 in the bunkhouse he had slept in for 22 years with Caleb Whitaker, sitting on the bed beside him, holding one of his hands, and Eli Turner on the other side holding the other. And his last words, spoken very clear, were, "Boss, she turned out fine." Caleb said, "Yes, Jonah, she did." And Jonah nodded once, and he closed his eyes, and he went. Eli Turner married a settlement girl named Clara in 1898, and he built his own house on 40 acres. Caleb deeded to him at cost, and he raised 4 children of his own, and he taught the eldest to cobble boots the way his grandmother had taught him cane and all. And on his 90th birthday, in 1947, he would tell a newspaper man from Denver that the finest woman he had ever known in his long life was a woman named Eleanor Hartwell Whitaker, who had walked out of a creek in the summer of 1879 and walked in her own time into the sunlight. By the year 1920, Nell was 64 years old. Her hair was white. Her back was still straight. She had buried Caleb 3 years before in the spring of 1917 under the cottonwoods at the creek, at the age of 71, and she had read his service herself because Judge Aaron Beale was long gone and there was nobody else alive in the territory, which was a state now, who had known him the way she had known him. She had kept his hat on the peg by the door. She had not remarried. She had not wanted to. On a summer afternoon in that year, Nell walked down the Pine Road with a girl of about 10 on her right hand, and the girl's name was Caroline, and Caroline was the daughter of Mary, who was the daughter of Nell, and Caroline had asked her grandmother a question at breakfast that morning, and her grandmother had said, "Child, that is not a kitchen question. That is a creek question. Come with me." They walked to the creek. Nell sat down on the flat rock Caleb had swept clean with his hat 40 years before. "Ask it again," she said. "Grandmother." "Yes, child." "Mama says you were saved by Grandpa Caleb. She says he found you in this creek and he saved your life. Is that true?" Nell Hartwell. Whitaker looked at the water. The water was running the way water had run in that creek in every summer of every year she had known it. It had carried snowmelt and cottonwood leaves, and once one frightened woman's blood out of a torn sleeve, and it had not stopped for any of it. And it would not stop for her either, and she found that at 64, she was grateful for the running of it. "Caroline?" "Yes, grandmother." Your mother told you a story. It is a good story. It is mostly true. But it is missing the end of itself, and today I am going to give you the end of it, because you are old enough now, and because your grandfather told me before he died that the day you asked this question at the creek, I was to tell you the real answer, because you would be the one in this family who would need it most. Do you hear me? Yes, grandmother. Your grandfather did not save me, Caroline. The girl's eyes went wide. He pulled me out of a creek. He gave me a bed. He gave me a gun, and he taught me to shoot it. He gave me a wage, and he taught me to keep it. He gave me a road, and he let me walk it. But he did not save me, child. Do you know who did? Who? I did. The girl was quiet. I saved myself, Caroline. The day I swung a lamp at a man who thought I was his. The day I ran out a window. The day I told Silas Crow no on that porch up there behind us. The day I signed my own name 3 times on a judge's blotter in Silverton. The day I got up on that horse and rode home of my own accord. Your grandfather gave me the ground. I did the walking. Do you understand the difference? I think so, grandmother. Say it back to me. He gave you the ground. You did the walking. Yes, child, and one day, if any man or any woman or any soul in this world ever tries to tell you that someone saved you, you tell them this. Freedom did not begin when a man saved me. It began when I chose not to belong to anyone but myself. Caroline said it back. She said it back again. She said it back a 3rd time, because her grandmother asked her to, and by the 3rd time, she had it in her bones, the way a bone sets right after it has been broken wrong for years, and she would carry it there for the rest of her life, and she would pass it down in her own kitchen to her own daughter. 40 years later, in 1961, in a house in California, and her daughter would pass it down in her own kitchen in 1994, in a house in Oregon, and that daughter would pass it down at a college graduation in 2022. And the auburn-haired girl who received it then would not know where it had come from, only that it had come to her, and that it was hers now, and that it had always somehow been hers. Nell Whitaker stood up off the flat rock at the creek. She took her granddaughter's hand. They walked back up the pine road together, and the yellow dog's great-great-grandson walked beside them, because there had always been a yellow dog on the Whitaker ranch, and there always would be, and the cottonwoods were still standing, and the creek was still running, and somewhere up at the house, Mary was putting bread in the oven, and Thomas was mending a fence, and Susanna was teaching a neighbor's child to read, and the Whitaker brand on the gatepost, a capital W with a small H curled inside it, had been repainted that spring by Nell's own hand. The creek ran on. It had carried one frightened woman's blood out of a torn sleeve on a hot afternoon in 1879, and it had carried her laughter across its own water on a dawn in the summer of the same year, and it had carried her vows on a June porch, and her children's first bathwater, and her husband's grave wreath, and now it carried through the quiet afternoon of 1920. The small voice of a 10-year-old girl, repeating a sentence to herself under her breath as she walked. Freedom did not begin when a man saved me. It began when I chose not to belong to anyone but myself. That is the true end of the story of Caleb Whitaker and Nell Hartwell. She was never property. She was never rescued. She was never owned. She was a woman who walked out of a creek, chose her own road, and built a house on it with her own 2 hands. And every woman who has ever stood on her own porch and said no to a man who thought he owned her in every town and every state and every century since, has stood, whether she knew it or not, on the same porch Nell Whitaker stood on in the summer of 1879 in the Colorado Territory, with a Colt in her hand and a cowboy at her back, and the whole long free country of the rest of her life stretching out in front of her. She stood. She walked. She was free. And she stayed free for every one of the 81 years that followed until the evening of October the 3rd, 1937, when she laid down in the bed in the back room of the ranch house behind the door that still locked from the inside, and she closed her eyes, and she went to meet her mother on the far bank of the last river, and her mother flower on her nose was waiting. That is the story. That is the whole of it. And every word of it is true.